So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him.
All right, guys, so we got to continue our coverage of the desperate Kamala Harris campaign and the mainstream liberal media colluding to stop Trump from winning the 2024 election, okay? Because according to the polls and how things are shaping up right now, Trump is headed for a landslide victory, and the derangement from the mainstream liberal media and the Democrats is getting worse and worse and worse the closer that we get to election day. I told you guys before that the derangement is going to be turned up to a level that we've never seen before, and they're at the point where they're quite literally just making shit up, okay? I mean, that is as plainly as I can put it, okay? They're just making things up, okay? And what's funny about this is that this fear-mongering about Trump, the things that they're making up, is not based in reality, which is that, hey, we have 4 years of Trump, and none of these things that they claim that Trump is going to do, he actually did. Like, for example, Trump did not lock up his political opponents. He did not start World War III. He is not Hitler, okay? He did not do any of the things that these people claim that he was going to do, okay? However, we have Biden in the White House right now, and we have his DOJ actively trying to lock President Trump up because of political disagreements, okay? They're politically persecuting the man right now. And Biden came out and said himself that Trump should be locked up, right? That they have to lock Trump up. This is what he said unequivocally. And the mainstream liberal media, for the most part, they're more focused on the hypotheticals and the things that Trump allegedly said behind closed doors that they have no evidence for, right? But you have the actual sitting president saying out loud that his political opponent should be locked up. And for whatever reason, they're not boohoo whining and crying and fear-mongering about that. But Karine Jean-Pierre, the affirmative action press secretary, was confronted on Biden's comments. And as per the usual, she turned into a stuttering mess, trying to explain and to gaslight the American people on what Biden actually meant when he straight up said that Trump should be locked up. Take a look.
This is a guy who also wants to replace every civil servant. Every single one. Thinks he has a right under the Supreme Court ruling on immunity to be able, if need be, if it was the case, to actually physically eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him. I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We gotta lock him up. Political document.
What did the president mean when he said last night about Donald Trump, we got to lock him up?
So look, and the president spoke about this very clearly as well in his statement, and he said he meant lock him out politically, lock him out. That's what he said, and that's what we have to do. That was the part of his quote that he said last night while he was in New Hampshire. Look, let's not forget, this is a president that has never shied away from being very clear and laying down what is at stake in this election. I'm going to be really mindful and not speaking about 2024 election. That's just less than 2 weeks away. But this is just speaking to what the president said last night. He made very clear yesterday that he was referring to defeating Donald Trump. That is what he was talking about. He said politically lock him out. That is what he was referring to.
Well, he first said twice, lock him up. So you're saying when he said lock him up, he meant defeat.
Well, it's not
Donald
what
Trump.
I'm saying. It's what he said. He said to the he right, exactly. He clarified himself. He wanted to make sure that things were put into context. He wanted to make sure that while not just New Hampshire folks that were there were going to see it, but also the Americans who are watching and pay attention to what the president is saying. He wanted to put it into context, and he himself, this is not me, this is the president himself going back to explain to say that he was talking about politically.
Yeah, this is why Democrats are losing. right? This is a comedy show. It really is a comedy show at this point. And I'm enjoying it. I really am. It's like, yo, why are you trying to gaslight the American people into believing that Biden didn't say something that he literally said on camera? This woman, Karine Jean-Pierre, she says, well, he said, lock him out. That's not what Biden said. Biden said, lock him up. He didn't say lock him out. Cringe literally changes what Biden said. That's what she's doing. When we have the video of him in context, in full context, saying, lock him up. Karine Jean-Pierre said, no. He said lock him out, right? He meant lock him out politically. That's what he actually meant. This is why they're losing, man. This is why they're losing. It's like, yo, if you are the average person and you listen to this type of gaslighting, you have to be offended. You're insulting my intelligence, okay? Democrats legitimately believe that the American people are stupid. And what really gets me about this, right, is that when Democrats make these type of statements, which they do regularly, right, they say all types of unhinged things. When they get called out about it, the first thing they run to is, well, context matters, right? Context matters, okay? You got to understand in context, this is what he or she was actually saying. But when it comes to Trump, though, context doesn't matter. When clearly in context, when Trump was talking about the bloodbath, he was talking about an economic bloodbath. Clearly in context, when Trump was talking about poison in the blood, he was talking about illegal immigrants and criminals more specifically. That's what he was talking about. In context, when Trump was talking about the enemies from within and using the military, the National Guard, he was talking about left-wing extremists who are committing acts of violence rioting in the street when you don't have law and order. That's clearly what he was talking about. But when it comes to Trump, though, context doesn't matter. It goes out the window, right? The latest thing, okay, that they're fear-mongering about is, again, a conversation in which there's no proof and evidence that Trump actually had. There's no proof and evidence that Trump actually said the things he's been accused of saying. But again, that doesn't matter to Karine Jean-Pierre. She doesn't bring up how important context is. We're talking about Trump allegedly praising Hitler. Take a look.
Is the president aware of John Kelly's assertion that Donald Trump meets the definition of a fascist, and that Trump wanted the kinds of generals Hitler had?
I mean, look, you have heard from this president over and over again about the threats to democracy, and the president has spoken about that. You've heard from the former president himself saying that he is going to be a dictator on day one. This is him, not us. This is him. And it's not just us, the White House, saying this. You've heard it from officials, former officials that worked for the former president, say this as well. So, you know, do we agree? I know that the vice president just spoke about this. Do we agree about that determination? Yes, we do. We do. Let's not forget, I will point you to January 6th. And I will add this, that, and I can't believe I even have to say this, but our nation's veterans are heroes. They are heroes. They're not losers or suckers, they are heroes. And to be praising Adolf Hitler is dangerous, and it's also disgusting.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, when it comes to suckers and losers, context doesn't matter. When it comes to dictator on day one, context doesn't matter. Enemies within, context doesn't matter. But when it comes to Biden saying on camera, lock him up, okay, we have to lock Trump up, okay? This guy's the president of the United States. His DOJ is in charge. He's saying this out loud. Oh, well, context matters, right? You got to understand. He said lock him out. Lock him out politically. What are you talking about? It's context, okay? You got to understand the context. Fascinating stuff. This is why they're losing, guys. This is why they're losing. This type of gaslighting is offensive, okay? And what I love the most about this story, about the desperation here, is that Republicans in the media are handling the mainstream liberal media and their obsession over these fake stories. They're handling this very well, okay? Because they are really going off on the media for essentially reporting on fake news with no real evidence behind it. So without further ado, let's get into it.
What is clear about why Kelly has said this now, or really reiterated it, confirmed it, is that he has a lot of concerns about Trump talking about this enemy within, this idea of using the American military to target his own political opponents, which is a very un-American idea, and that is something that's the timing. To your timing question, that's the answer there.
Well, perhaps. I don't know John Kelly. I don't think I've ever even met him. He clearly has a deep disdain for Donald Trump and was fired by him. You also have the owner of the Atlantic magazine is a huge donor for Kamala Harris and a close personal friend. So I find that incredibly interesting. And on this kind of enemies within, what President Trump actually said was, if we have national unrest, if we have riots, if we have people and law and order is broken down, then it is completely appropriate to use the military. The National Guard has been used throughout our history.
He has named the Pelosi's congressman. He has named your colleague Adam Schiff.
You had Adam Schiff on this network and many others lying to the American people, opening a hearing lying to the American people, saying that he had seen, but you raised him.
And saying he
had seen evidence of Russian collusion that proved to be false, and our country was in total chaos for 2 years on a hoax, which also affected our relationship with Russia. So that is an enemy within. And I don't think that he said that he's going to use the military to target him. He said in one part of the conversation, we have to quell riots and keep law and order, and if the military needs to support law enforcement, fine. And on the other hand, he said we have people that are misleading the American public, that's causing chaos.
I just want to be clear.
I hope you can roll the
He's talked about the tape. He's talked about the National Guard, and then he talked about the military.
But let's go back to
Yeah, again, see, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to Trump, context doesn't matter, right? Clearly, she's mixing up the contexts in which he is using the enemy from within and how to address those issues, okay? In one context, he was asked about the left-wing rioters who caused violence and chaos as a result of losing the election, right? Election results they don't like, which, again, this is something that we've seen from the left before, right? In which he specifically talks about, hey, you know, we may have to use the National Guard in order to deal with these people who are committing acts of violence. Now, when it comes to talking about the Democrats, okay, specifically elected officials, at no point did he ever suggest using the military on Democrats, right? Actual elected officials, right? He never said that. Never even suggested it. If you watch the whole interview, those are two completely different conversations. Completely different subjects, completely different topics. But if you listen to the media, you would think that he was talking about the left-wing rioters and the Democrats in the same conversation, talking about the same topic. And that's not true at all. Not true at all. Okay. But again, the Democrats leave that context out of it. Now, when it comes to Joe Biden, though, talking about locking up Trump, okay, locking up his political opponents, they will bend over backwards. They will do mental gymnastics to try to justify and to say, no, you got to understand context matters, right? The context in which he was saying it, what he was really talking about was politically locking out Trump. He didn't really mean locking him up. He didn't really mean that. Again, it's funny how that works. Biden and Democrats always get the benefit of the doubt when they say unhinged things about Trump. But when Trump says something that clearly in context is not what the mainstream liberal media is saying that he said, he doesn't get that benefit of the doubt, right? Context doesn't matter. And again, this is why the American people do not trust the media. This is why the media has become a joke. This is why they're very disliked, because this type of dishonesty.
Go back to this notion of fascism and centralized control, because we have an allegation of rhetoric. We have, he said versus he said. And then what I'm seeing are actual actions by the progressive left. I mean, fascism really is about no checks and balances, no controls. They want to stack the Supreme Court. I've seen that legislation. They want to eliminate the filibuster, our last kind of harbinger of bipartisanship. They want to eliminate the Electoral College, which would have just a couple of cities determining our next president. Those are critical checks and balances that will check power for anyone. And the left is actually moving to eliminate them because they don't like him. So what I think voters are going to have to decide in these next couple of weeks is we have allegations of rhetoric from a conversation 4 years ago, or actions that they are seeing right now from the left, or the lack of action in terms of making their lives better in the economy, in crime, in the border, and in global chaos. And I think it's those actions that they're going to be voting on.
Yeah, I think that this congressman did a good job of explaining this to the CNN anchor. But, you know, ultimately, at the end of the day, they're going to continue to just take everything that Trump says out of context and make excuses for Democrats, even though, again, from an actions perspective, we saw under the first Trump administration, none of these things that they're fear-mongering about happened, right? Didn't happen at all, okay? Now, they'll point to January 6th time and time again, but again, it's hard to be obsessed with January 6th and to be stuck on it when we had a series of riots, all of which, in my opinion, were worse than January 6th, happened leading up to January 6th, right? And these riots and this violence happened, in my opinion, partly because of Democrat rhetoric, okay? The fact that they were essentially supporting these riots, okay, and the left-wing extremists. When you have these things that actually happen, along with Democrat rhetoric, again, it's hard to point the finger at Trump and to claim that he's such a threat when we have a history of the Democrats not only using unhinged rhetoric, but we've seen chaos as a result of it, right? We've actually seen this, okay? We saw it with the BLM riots. We saw it with the Roe v. Wade riots. We've seen it with the pro-Palestine riots. I mean, we've seen this stuff for the last 5 or 6 years straight. So when you come out here and you fearmonger about what could potentially happen under Trump, when we're seeing all these things that you're fearmongering about happen under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, yeah, the American people are not going to fall for it. They're just not going to. And that's what's happening right now. You know, these people, they're actually upset. Right, I actually saw a tweet from Jennifer Rubin on X in which she is upset about the fact that she believes that the media is not covering this story enough, right? She says they simply don't understand the stakes, or they are intent on currying favor with MAGA gang. It's a disgrace. So again, that's how out of touch with reality these people are, where they really believe that the mainstream liberal media is not talking about this story enough, when that's all they're talking about. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this story is not dominating because it's not a real story, okay? There's no evidence behind it. There's no proof behind it. It's he said, she said. That's all it is. And again, when people see that you're obsessed with these stories, but yet you're not obsessed with Joe Biden calling for Trump to be locked up while he is sitting president, and his DOJ is currently actually trying to lock Trump up, but yet you're ignoring that, you don't think that's a story that's worth talking about? Yeah, the American people can see through this, right? They can see through the desperation. They can see through the hypocrisy here. They can see through the fact that clearly this is propaganda. And again, this only makes Trump stronger. I don't know why these people haven't figured out that one of the reasons why Trump is stronger than he's ever been is because the mainstream liberal media's obsession with him, right? If the media actually was fair and they reserved their criticism for Trump for things that he actually deserves to be criticized for, and they criticized the Democrats and they actually were fair and balanced, then these types of criticisms, real stories, real issues would be effective, right? It would actually work, okay? But it's this constant Trump derangement 24/7, making everything that he say seems like it's something that is not, okay? And also on top of that, never covering the Democrats, never criticizing the Democrats the same way. This is why the man is stronger than he's ever been, right? That is what's happening. And it's so funny because these people haven't figured out after 8 years that this does not work. It doesn't work. So, hey, you know, it is what it is at this point. I just find this to be comical, right? The fact that they're just throwing things at the wall and they're trying to see what sticks, and nothing is literally nothing is sticking. And the more they do this and the more it doesn't work, the more deranged they get, it just basically undermines their credibility even more, right? It's just so funny to see what's happening. And again, the most hilarious part about it is that they don't even realize why it's happening. They don't even understand it. And that's what makes them even more deranged. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.